and I hope you don't mind, but I've got another favor to ask. I've had word from a settlement asking for help.
Hey there guys, Nordic Warrior here, welcome back to my video game review series. So today is the 10-year anniversary of Fallout 4, and as you can tell by the title, we're going to be giving it a full, in-depth retrospective review. As long-time subscribers of mine will know, I've been talking about reviewing Fallout 4 for quite a while, and the reason I've put it off until now is because it's one of them games that ever since it first came out, I've always had mixed feelings on. What I will say right off the bat is that despite it being an 8th generation title, a generation of gaming that I'm not particularly a fan of if truth be told, it's a game that I'm actually weirdly nostalgic about, and it actually has a special place in my heart. And I think the main reason for this is that this game was my initial introduction to that generation of gaming. When I first bought my Xbox One, about 2 or so years after the console came out, this was the first game that I got and played along with it. So yeah, I'll always kind of see this game as my introduction to 8th gen gaming. It's also the last game ever to come out that I was actually hyped about. I couldn't wait to play this game on its release, and the main reason for that is that, as some of you know, back then I was a massive fan of the Elder Scrolls games. I guess you could say I was also a casual Fallout fan, although I definitely preferred Elder Scrolls. I had played Skyrim to death at that point, and I figured that while waiting for another Elder Scrolls to be announced, something that I now have no interest in, but we'll get to that, I may as well satisfy that craving with another epic Bethesda RPG. Yet when playing the game for the first time, while I enjoyed certain aspects of it, at the same time I found it to be a massive disappointment, and in my opinion it was nowhere near as good as I expected it to be. So much so, that as I mentioned before, I haven't been the slightest bit hyped for a game's release since. Long story short, I completed Fallout 4 back in the day, and found it to be a very frustrating experience for many reasons. The main one being that in my experience, the game was just flat out broken. It's no secret that Bethesda is always and has always been known for being absolutely awful in this regard, being practically unable to make a game that worked properly on release. And even after years and years of patches and fixes, most of which are done by the community rather than Bethesda themselves, the games would still be filled with game-breaking bugs. This wasn't so bad in some of their older games. For example, I never experienced issues with Morrowind, but as time went on, with each new release it seemed to get worse. As much as I love Skyrim, I still run into game-breaking bugs from time to time, often leading to soft lock quests, and it usually causes me to rage quit. I'm like a battered housewife when it comes to that game. The reason I'm bringing this up is because as buggy and unstable as Skyrim was, it was absolute technical perfection compared to Fallout 4. Seriously, Fallout 4, back when I first played it, was by far the most broken mess of a game I had ever played. It reminded me of Enter the Dragonfly, a game that I liked and really enjoyed, but was so buggy and unfinished that it made it unplayable at times. Fallout 4 was even worse. I couldn't play the game for more than an hour without it crashing, or dialogue being missing from a particular conversation, or a quest refusing to load or trigger, or getting trapped in a wall, or soft locked and having to reload, items not working properly or not spawning in, switches not working, locations not rendering. There were just so many aspects of the game that were so buggy that they were flat out broken. I mean, beyond buggy. It made the game practically unplayable for me. And before you tell me that this is because I was playing on a console, a quick Google search reveals that numerous PC players had the exact same problems I had, and had to use hacks and mods to complete the game, even the main story. speaking of the main story, on my first ever playthrough, I managed to make it to the very end of the game, the bit where you have to press the switch to blow up the Institute, spoiler alert for a 10-year-old game, and the button wouldn't activate. So I did all that work and never got to see the final cutscene. I actually had to restart the entire game to fix the issue, and of course during subsequent playthroughs, I ran into a plethora of technical issues and soft locks, having me constantly spamming the quick save, making multiple saves as backups in almost every area, something I tend to do off habit now when playing RPGs, all thanks to Fallout 4. Seriously, in 2015, I had never experienced any game as technically broken as Fallout 4. It was just a flat out mess. If this wasn't your experience with the game, and if it worked perfectly for you, I highly doubt that, then fair enough. But my initial experience with the game was awful, having to constantly Google ways to fix bugs and broken quests, very frustrating. So with that in mind, as you can possibly imagine, I had some very negative memories of my experience with Fallout 4, as it's just a game that, despite its merits, was a bit of a headache since it rarely worked as it was supposed to. And as you can imagine, it's not a game I revisited much over the years after completing the story a few times. I kinda just had enough of it, put it back on the shelf and went right back to playing Elder Scrolls, as well as some of the older Fallout games, which I will be reviewing sometime in the near future, so stay tuned for that. I decided since the 10-year anniversary was coming up, I may as well give the game another chance and try to experience it from a fresh perspective, for the purpose of giving it as in-depth a retrospective review as possible. So I did just that, replayed the game start to finish, and tried to experience everything it had to offer. Another thing that I decided to do, which is something that as an RPG player I don't normally do, is I decided to play through the game with mods. The reason I did this is because I couldn't be bothered dealing with bugs, glitches, soft locks and broken quests which only served to waste my time, and I figured the best way to prevent this as much as possible was to use mods. So yeah, that's exactly what I did. Plus, mods generally help when you're playing through a game quickly for the purpose of a review, and you don't have time for all the grinding and stuff. You just want to get plenty of footage of the game for the purpose of demonstration, that sort of thing. After doing that and playing the game for several days, for long hours on end, I have to say that it greatly improved the overall experience. So much so, and I normally wouldn't say this about any game to be honest, but if you're going to play this game, I would actually recommend playing it with mods. Because again, it helps to prevent so many technical issues and so much time wasting. So I did exactly that, experienced as much of the game as I could, and I'm going to give it a full review. Let's get started.
War. War never changes.
Before I go any further, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the like button, since it really helps the channel, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one. What I will say right off the bat is that in retrospect I found Fallout 4 to be a very interesting and somewhat confusing experience for several reasons. So the game is of course an open world RPG that pretty much follows the same formula as all Bethesda's RPGs, at least in terms of its overall gameplay style. Those of you familiar with the overall Fallout setting will know that it takes place in a retro-futuristic, post-apocalyptic wasteland in the aftermath of a nuclear war between the US and China generations ago. The game starts in the year 2077, right before the bombs fell, in the city of Boston, Massachusetts, and you take control of a recently retired war veteran, living in a beautiful, picturesque 1950s style suburb known as Sanctuary Hills.
Ah, good morning, sir. Your coffee. 173.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Brewed to perfection.
Thanks, Cosworth.
Of course, sir.
Grognak the Barbarian and the Jungle of the Bat Babies. My favorite.
Like most of Bethesda's RPGs, you start the game off with a character creator. This was actually one of the first major disappointments for me, the way Bethesda handled the character creator. It's worth pointing out that Bethesda's character creators were never really that good when compared to a lot of other RPGs, or even some action-adventure games from the time. For example, games like the Saints Row series or the Fight Night series had extremely complex face and body structuring, as well as a whole bunch of funny and interesting presets. Some of EA's games even let you upload a scan of your own face so you can literally play as yourself. Bethesda's character creators have always been several generations behind in that regard. Fallout 4's character creator, while it's a step up from Skyrim's, is still a bit limited in my opinion, and no matter how much time I spent on it, I couldn't really come close to making a character that resembled myself, or any type of character I wanted to make. I suppose it's not that big a deal, since a large portion of the game is played in first person, which helps with the shooting of course, but I figured I'd bring it up anyway. Before actually crafting your character, you get to choose between a man and a woman, which will affect the story slightly, but not much. Once your character is created, you get a useful tutorial where you get to explore the house and interact with the environment. You also get plenty of dialogue and visual storytelling.
Good morning.
Isn't it? Just look at that sky out there. You can't begin to know how happy I am to finally speak with you. I've been trying for days. It's a matter of utmost urgency, I assure you.
Then I'm glad you caught up with me.
In addition to this, like any Bethesda RPG, you get a few choices in the tutorial that allow you to change your player class. It's not quite as specific as it is in a game like Morrowind, with you choosing a class outright with major and minor skills, as well as perks and traits and things of that nature. Instead, you simply get a choice between adding points to your special attributes. These are basically passive upgrades to each individual trait that relate to specific skills and perks, of course relating to the overall leveling system, more on that later. You also get introduced to the dialogue choices and RPG elements, and how it all works. One thing that got the game a lot of criticism on its release is the fact that Bethesda added a voiced protagonist, meaning no matter what type of character you create, and no matter how you play the game, your character will sound the exact same and has the exact same boring, monotoned voice, with the voice actor phoning it in the whole way. That really annoyed me personally, since when I play these kinds of RPGs, I like to imagine the protagonist having my voice, and that's how I imagine it when I read the possible responses. Having a voiced protagonist completely ruined the immersion for me. It's a criticism that I still agree with. It was a bad decision from Bethesda in my opinion. That, along with the simplification of the leveling system, also led to another major issue I had with it in regards to the watering down of the RPG elements from previous games in the series. More on that later. Once the tutorial is over, you get an announcement that the bombs have begun flying and nuclear war has begun, and the protagonist, along with his wife and baby son Sean, must head to the nearby vault to escape the blast and save their lives. After narrowly escaping the blast, the family, along with a few other residents of Sanctuary Hills, get inducted into the vault, where they believe they're going to live the foreseeable future, and ride out the nuclear war. One thing leads to another, and they all get put into an inoculation chamber, which turns out to be a cryogenic freezer, and get put to sleep. Upon awakening, a strange, bald-headed man with a scar opens up one of the chambers, executes the protagonist's spouse, and kidnaps Sean, before putting the protagonist back on ice. Upon waking up a second time, you find that the vault is in disrepair and decay, and appears to have been abandoned for a very long time, which is confusing as far as the protagonist is concerned. You just went to sleep a few moments ago, or did you? Here you get another quick tutorial that helps to familiarise you with the overall controls and gameplay, as well as introducing you to the combat. It's worth pointing out that the combat is pretty much the same as Fallout 3, only with some minor changes, but it does feel significantly smoother and more well optimised. For example, with the first person shooting and melee combat, it just all feels more impactful this time, and less janky and unresponsive. The combat generally has a more polished feel. Of course, it's here where you will get a feel for the overall playstyle, getting the option to pick easy locks or hack easy computer terminals, things that will become very important later as the difficulty increases. Shortly after you escape from the vault, and after getting one more chance to change your character settings or aesthetics, you finally get that iconic shot of the wasteland while exiting the vault, something that became a staple of the series. I have to say I really enjoyed the opening introduction to the game, and I don't think Bethesda could have done a better job with it. The way the game establishes the protagonist's perfect young family and 1950s style suburban life, having him bond with his wife and son, immediately establishing the stakes, as well as giving you a motive to see the story through to the end, as well as taking it all away so dramatically and so quickly, introducing some psychological survival horror elements, The aesthetics of the vault and the concept of losing a child like that, so immersive and so fantastic. Unfortunately though, as far as the story and writing goes, in my opinion, it's pretty much all downhill from there. I'll get to that later. Once you escape from the vault, that's literally where the game really begins, and you can basically do whatever you want. Whether you want to go out looking for your son, following clues, interrogating people, and building your connections to help you traverse and navigate the wasteland, getting to the bottom of the mystery, or you just want to dick about for weeks planting a garden and building a farm, or going around wiping out horribly irradiated abominations, creatures or raiders, or delving into ruins looking for loot, it's up to you. Open world game and all. But naturally, given the incredible introduction, you're gonna want to experience the story. As far as the open world goes, it of course looks great. The game is huge. There are numerous locations, both interior and exterior. For example, you have the ruins of the city of Boston, which is basically a massive war zone between various factions, such as super mutants. Yeah, the super mutants return from previous games. Raiders, mercenaries, Minutemen, feral ghouls, and various other factions. It's just a mess, and a part of the game that you're guaranteed to get set about every couple of minutes or so. You also have various rural and countryside areas to explore, most of which are filled with small settlements and camps, some hostile to the player, some not, as well as irradiated creatures which are pretty much all hostile. You get several underground areas which are extremely dark and dangerous, such as subways and whatnot. There are numerous caves and ruins, swamps and bogs, and there's even an area of the game that is practically unsurvivable, a horrible, radiation-filled toxic wasteland known as the Glowing Sea, filled with death claws and rad scorpions and things of that nature. That part of the game is creepy. So yeah, long story, the open world is beautiful, and really well designed, as it always is with Bethesda games. Unfortunately though, in my opinion, it suffers from the exact same problem as most open world games, in the sense that it's just boring. One thing that I noticed about the game very quickly is how shallow the overall experience was in regards to the game's RPG elements, and nowhere is this more apparent than in the open world. Aside from the main story, which I have a lot of issues with, I'll get to that, most of the content in the game is flat out garbage, in my opinion. The side quests in Fallout 4, aside from a few small exceptions, are all complete and utter crap. Most of the locations, while looking good, have nothing to them, and nothing interesting to find. No interesting lore to discover. Any interesting concept you do come across in the open world, from an overall world building perspective, is taken straight from Fallout 3, such as seeing an alien spaceship, visiting the crash site and finding an alien pistol. Fallout 3 had this too, as well as a whole DLC dedicated to the origins of it. Of course I will talk about that when I finally get round to reviewing Fallout 3 next year, but I digress. Point being, when I first found this in Fallout 4, it didn't feel like much of a surprise. It just felt copied from the last game. However, as boring as the open world exploration and side quests are, they have nothing on the tedium of the game's faction quests. So as I'm sure you guys know, the Fallout universe has several factions all vying for power, each of them with their own agenda or ideology, with various splinter factions in each of them, and it has to be said that a lot of the supplementary lore here is very good. The game has 4 main joinable factions, some of which are mutually exclusive. For example, one faction you're prompted to join early in the game is the Minutemen. Those are basically your standard goody two-shoes faction, decided to help the Commonwealth, protecting it from raiders or hostile creatures, and managing and building up settlements. They're dedicated to all this. This is fine and all, but as I'll explain in a bit, screw the Minutemen. I'm getting ahead of myself, let me calm myself down a second. You have a creepy underground cult of scientists, believed to be responsible for kidnapping people and experimenting on them, as well as developing synthetic humans, kind of like in Blade Runner, known as the Institute. This is basically the standard villain faction like the Enclave in previous games. You have a gang of nutcases who dedicate themselves to rescuing synths, the previously mentioned synthetic people developed by the Institute, basically highly advanced robots used for the purpose of infiltration, some of which don't know they're robots, I'll get to that. These guys are known as the Railroad.
The railroad helped me.
Oh God, those kooks. I would have expected they'd be too busy trying to liberate vending machines or setting computer terminals free or... Sorry, they just have something of a reputation.
And you of course have the most iconic Fallout faction, the Brotherhood of Steel.
Super mutants are no better than synths. They're a reminder of man's folly when it comes to harnessing technology. Whether it's using biochemistry to manipulate genes, or trying to create life from a bunch of circuits. It's the wrong path for science. As members of the Brotherhood, it's our sworn duty to exterminate these abominations in every form. So, can I count on you to get the job done?
Consider it done.
Look, I realize you're eager to take the fight to the Institute, but it'll have to wait. The Brotherhood cannot allow those abominations to have a nuclear arsenal at their fingertips.
It'll be a pleasure to exterminate that mutant filth.
Now, we have a vertibird on standby, fully armed and ready to depart. Use it to carry our message to Fort Strong, and wipe those dirty mutants from the face of the earth.
The Brotherhood of Steel are pretty based, I have no issue with them. So yeah, those are the 4 main joinable factions in the game, and again there are plenty of interesting lore bits behind them, and there's a lot to talk about. Unfortunately though, almost every single quest line involving each of them is absolute, complete and utter garbage, and some of the writing involved is not only bad, but I could actually make a whole video dedicated to how shockingly nonsensical the whole thing is. I'm not going to bother with that here. Suffice it to say, the story is absolute drivel in regards to how the factions are implemented. But for now I want to focus on the gameplay and quest design. The faction quests, aside from the few I said before, are garbage. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, about 90% of the missions are Radiant quests. You know how when Skyrim came out, Todd Howard said that the game would have unlimited quests. Technically this is true. What he meant by this is, the game would be filled with boring, copy and paste, randomly generated fetch quests, which consisted of go to cave, kill enemy, done. Return to cave, find random quest item, bring it back, done. And so on and so forth. You get the picture. That's what Todd meant by unlimited quests. That got Skyrim a lot of criticism back in the day. Well, despite that, the geniuses at Bethesda thought, you know what, let's make every single faction quest in Fallout 4 a boring Radiant quest that repeats over and over, and nowhere, and I mean nowhere, is this anywhere near as bad with any faction as it is with the Minutemen.
Another settlement has sent word that they need our help. I'll mark it on your map.
I swear I lost so many brain cells hearing that bell-end Preston Garvey repeat the same crap over and over and over and over and over again before you even get a chance to speak to him about a development in the story, or issue him a command, or receive payment for the last settlement you helped. You hear the words every gamer dreads to hear.
I've heard of another settlement that's in trouble. I'll mark the location on your map. Another settlement has sent word that they need our help. I'll mark it on your map. We'll find out what they need.
Ready to get this show on the road?
I've heard of another settlement that's in trouble. I'll mark the location on your map.
Hey,
Go ahead. I've heard of another settlement that's in trouble. I'll mark it on your map. We'll find out what they need.
I swear, if I have to help another settlement, especially one I've already helped about 5 times, I'm actually gonna nuke them. I'm not kidding. I will take a fat man, a giant rocket launcher that fires mini nukes, for you non-Fallout fans, and I will blast it right into the middle of that settlement and nuke them off the face of the Commonwealth. I am not joking. I have an unlimited amount of mini nukes. Screw Preston Garvey, screw his boring to death, monotone voice, screw the Minutemen, and screw all their garbage ass settlements. Seriously, you meet Dogmeat, the best character in the game by far, save Preston and his gang of junkies and useless morons. 5 seconds later he makes you the general. Again, this harkens back to another major criticism of Skyrim, how every joinable faction made you the leader like 5 minutes later. The Minutemen literally make you the leader seconds after you join. You couldn't make this up. Oh, and when I say leader, I mean personal errand boy. I swear, Preston was flat out trolling me the whole game, following me around, barking orders at me, sending me to help settlements, and even sometimes sending me back to that same settlement later on to repeat the exact same Radiant quest that I did earlier. So even the Radiant randomization is broken in this game, and when I decide to go and do something else, like a side quest, or talking to an NPC or something simple like that, Preston stands there judging me and criticising me for basic, moderate, inoffensive comments that make no difference to the story whatsoever.
If you want to continue pitching in, we could use an extra gun on our side.
That all depends. How much are you paying?
It's always about the money with you, isn't it?
So you're a mercenary. Typical.
Shut up, Preston. I saved your ass numerous times and you made me the bloody general. Don't get mad at me and criticise me for complimenting a guy on his power armor. Shut your ass up and go away. Seriously, I hate Preston with a passion. Guy needs to go suck on shish kebab. Speaking of power armor, I love the way that power armor was implemented in this game. You know, in Fallout 3 for example, power armor was garbage. In fact, in some places it seemed like a bit of a hindrance, and the more I play that game, the more I notice that power armor doesn't even seem any more effective than just the game's random armor. Like, it didn't seem that impactful at all. It seemed like it was tacked on to me. So yeah, power armor in Fallout 3 was garbage. And, you know, the things you have to go through to get it don't really seem that important once you get it. It seems relatively inconsequential. That was one of the issues I had with Fallout 3. In Fallout 4, power armor makes you feel like a tank. You know, you put it on and you feel so big, the ground shakes when you walk. Bullets just bounce off you. Power armor was awesome. I really liked the way it was implemented, and I didn't even mind the whole gimmick of having to find power cells to power it, because there's plenty of them in the game and it gave you a little bit of a reward for exploration. So yeah, power armor, excellent. I have no issues with it. But back to the topic of the garbage ass Minutemen. To prove how broken these Minutemen quests were, I decided to use mods to give me unlimited crafting supplies, and I built up some of the settlements and gave them numerous turrets, guard posts, supplies, water, food, electricity, all the essentials, all that good stuff, walls and stores, and some armed security even. And I made it so that the settlement was flat out uninvadable. And what do you know? I would still get a notification that the settlement was under attack and I needed to go there so it didn't get wiped out. Or Preston would send me to help someone who was recently kidnapped. Again, I already saved them earlier. And how did a gang of raiders kidnap him when the place is literally an impenetrable fortress filled with and surrounded by auto turrets and mines? It doesn't make sense. So yeah, did I mention the Minutemen faction sucks? Yeah, it does. And the other factions aren't much better. The Brotherhood of Steel are my personal favourite faction, and the one I always feel compelled to join. They have the best armour, best weapons, the coolest soundtrack, a giant intimidating airship. Their leader is a badass, pragmatic warlord who has zero tolerance for the horrors of the wasteland or the misuse of technology, and they just have an overall aura and style which resonates with me personally.
The Commonwealth. Do not interfere. Our intentions are peaceful. We are the Brotherhood of Steel.
Plus, if you join them and complete the main quest from their perspective, you get to hang out with Liberty Prime, which is based.
Communism. The very definition of evil. Memorial site recognized. Patriotism subroutines. Engaged. Honoring the fallen is the duty of every red-blooded American.
Unfortunately though, you only get about 4 or 5 actual quests that feel unique in any way. The rest of them are just garbage like the Minutemen. Completely boring, repetitive, radiant garbage. Go to a building and collect a document, or wipe out some synths, or some super mutants, or go to a farm and ask them to support the Brotherhood with crops or caps. Then get sent back to that same farm every single time, because the randomizer is broken. Man, this game pisses me off. Rinse and repeat garbage. Seriously, all the factions are like this. You get a handful of actual quests, and a bunch of broken, buggy, random, radiant garbage. Missions like the final assault on the Institute, following Liberty Prime and his trail of destruction across the streets of Boston, before smashing your way through the Institute and exterminating every synth and bitch-ass scientist on site, or defending the castle from a giant Mirelurk queen and her minions, or flying a vertibird to an island run by super mutants and exterminating the abominations with extreme prejudice, or teaming up with a synth detective and using dog meat to follow clues to track down your son and kidnap her. Awesome missions like this, and quests that were really memorable and that I really enjoyed, are sadly overshadowed and outnumbered by piles of repetitive garbage, making most of the game feel like an absolute chore to play and a waste of time. Again, look, it's not all bad and you do get some interesting distractions from time to time. I quite like Diamond City and some of its mysteries and residents. I also quite like the town of Covenant and their secret synth detention facility. That was quite an interesting quest, if a bit buggy, like the rest of them.
If you can get that test to work, that could be a game changer.
And then everything we've done will be justified.
I also quite like that mission, where you think you're in a haunted house, but it just turns out you're actually being stalked by a Deathclaw, and you get a choice to either sell a Deathclaw egg to a trader, or deliver it back to its nest. That reminded me of Jurassic Park 3. It also kind of reminds me of Condemned for some reason, I'm not sure why. The game also continues with a lot of the Lovecraftian lore that was introduced in Fallout 3, such as the infamous Dunwich mystery, and all that good stuff, as well as the mystery of the Cabot family, and choosing how to resolve that. I like that too. I like that classic RPG formula of allowing you to resolve certain things peacefully, using speech skills developed through the perk trees.
Darla, listen to me. You have a home to go back to. You don't want to throw your life away with these thugs.
You're right! What am I doing? I've gotten all mixed up.
Darla, where are you going?
Home, Skinny, where I should have been all this time. This is goodbye for us.
Oh, come on, Nikki. You cost me my men, now you and your friend cost me my girl?
My friend here just did you a favor, Skinny. You always did have bad taste in women. Now that she's not around to feed that temper of yours, maybe you'll see sense and let us walk. You still owe me for 2 weeks in the hole.
You smug, overconfident ass. Get out of here! All right, you get to the count of 10. I still see your face after that. I'm gunning both of you down.
All this of course adds to the overall replay value, and as always it's much appreciated by me. Even if the immersion is kind of ruined by the inclusion of a voice protagonist. Seriously, I still cannot get my head around this to this day, and some of the decisions Bethesda made with this game. So yeah, the story and writing takes a massive nosedive after the intro. It's quite funny because it feels at a certain point like you're prompted to forget about finding your son, and it becomes the Preston settlement comedy hour. Thankfully, the game does have a few interesting characters with their own subplots that I'll talk about a bit later. Some of them even return from Fallout 3. So yeah, the Radiant quests are absolute garbage, as well as most of the side quests. But the game is a bit of a mixed bag in that regard, since every now and then you may come across something interesting, or a plot point that is quite complex. Thankfully though, if you don't care about all that, and you just want a post-apocalyptic walking simulator / shooting gallery, then the game is an absolute blast to play. As I said before, the combat is significantly improved from previous games, and it just flows so much better than before. There are plenty of guns in the game, more so than previous games, and there are quite a few melee weapons too, most of which being makeshift weapons, the kind of thing you'd probably find in a post-apocalypse, or so I'd imagine. The game also introduced crafting systems. That was a bit of a chore, to be honest, though it made sense given the setting. I'd say it's only worth doing with mods, however, since in the base game there isn't really much you can do with it, besides slightly upgrading weapons. There are of course also some unique and legendary weapons to find hidden in the game, some of which you get as rewards for completing certain quests. These are always worth collecting since they can be useful. For some reason though, I usually tend to take a more diplomatic approach when I play Fallout games. I usually try to invest points in speech every time I level up, so I tend to be able to negotiate with NPCs and talk my way out of situations most of the time. For some reason I find this more fun than simply blowing their heads off. It's quite funny though, because I remember my first playthrough, I shot the leader of the Institute on sight as soon as he walked into the room simply because I felt like it. Seriously, he walked through the door and I blew him away with a shotgun before he managed to say a word. What's funny about that is that during that very conversation, he tells you the game's major twist, which makes blasting him like that pretty hilarious if you ask me. But yeah, for the most part I tend to take a diplomatic approach to such things, when the game lets me. Sadly though, this leads to another issue I have with the game that I alluded to earlier, the simplified leveling system. In previous games, the leveling system was relatively complex and nuanced, and you were really prompted to make a specific playstyle, one that you'd be relying on the entire game. Do you want to be a tough guy, powerhouse who beats people to a pulp with a super sledge, or a slick gunslinger, quick on the draw, or a stealthy sniper who sneaks around picking locks, a scientific genius who uses and maintains futuristic laser guns and sci-fi style weapons, hacking computer terminals and treating wounds with medicine, things of that nature? Or do you want to just be a master negotiator, talking your way out of situations and bargaining with NPCs, getting them to give you information or do your bidding? Point being, depending on your playstyle, every single playthrough was different, and worth experiencing multiple times. In Fallout 4 however, everything just kind of feels the same, a jack of all trades kind of thing. The leveling up system and perk selections are incredibly simplistic, and many of them feel tacked on and unfinished, making them feel a little bit inconsequential, which is disappointing if you ask me. It's difficult to really explain it, but the leveling system here just felt lame. I mean, it just felt like a little bit too simple to me. I really don't understand why Bethesda keeps doing this. Like, what was wrong with Morrowind's leveling system? It was fine how it was if you ask me. It's not a big deal or anything like that, it's nothing major, but I just think it could have been more like the previous games. I had a lot of issues with Fallout 3 and New Vegas. They certainly weren't perfect games, but their leveling systems were way better than this. Another slight issue I have with the game is one that I also had with Oblivion, and that's the lack of interesting or unique clothing or armour. One of the best things about Morrowind, in my opinion, was how you could read a book about certain legendary relics, items of extreme value that supposedly existed in universe, some real, some myth, some of which you could actually find hidden in the game if you explored the map enough, and searched in every nook and cranny, speaking to every NPC and completing every quest and side quest. You'd be exploring a random cave, and find a beautiful magical shield that turned out to be one of these legendary items, having the highest stats of any shield in the game, and probably a unique enchantment, or a legendary piece of armour hidden deep in an ancient vault that you'd never expect to find, that makes the player immune to fire attacks. Things like that made the game worth exploring for hours on end, on the off chance of finding something unique and legendary. Oblivion didn't really have this appeal, at least not to the same extent, and Fallout 4 is even worse in that regard. Most of the legendary items in the game, while they are cool, most of them are not exactly unique, and are basically just reskinned and slightly higher stat having versions of other items in the game. This goes for both weapons, armour, and of course clothing items. There are some unique ones like Shish Kebab, which returns from Fallout 3, or that ceremonial dagger you can find in the Dunwich mines, but these are few and far between and don't have the same value or worth in terms of the advantage they give you as the legendary items in Morrowind did, particularly when you can simply make or upgrade things with the crafting system that are significantly better than the legendary items. Again, this kinda does fit with the setting, but it's not to my personal taste, it is what it is. As I mentioned before, the game does have some interesting characters, and while the writing in general is pretty bad, that isn't always the case. The game's companion system, while it annoyed me that you can only once again have one companion at a time, seriously, there's a mod for Skyrim that lets you have as many as you want. Why Bethesda couldn't have just let you have 3 or 4 is beyond me, but I digress. I actually did like the way it was implemented to an extent. It reminded me a bit of how it was done in Knights of the Old Republic 2. You remember how in that game your companion would react to just about everything you did, and it would either raise or decrease your disposition with them accordingly. This includes dialogue choices, say or do the right things and a character will either like or dislike it, and they will sometimes chime into a conversation with their own opinion. With most of the characters it's fine, with Preston however, yeah, let's not talk about that moron for now. Characters like Piper will be very easy to impress. Just say something nice or save someone and she's gushing over you in no time, throwing herself at you practically. Same with Paladin Dance, all you have to do is put on some power armor and it will automatically raise your disposition with him. You can do this as many times as you want and raise it very quickly. Some of the other characters are a bit more tricky to impress, some are a bit more nuanced. You get this big, dumb super mutant guy called Strong, the only super mutant in the entire game who isn't entirely hostile to you. And this is often the example people in the community use to say that the Brotherhood is evil. Yeah, I mean every single super mutant on the planet, except one, is a mass murdering sociopath who will kill you as soon as look at you. But having prejudice against them is evil, because you can get one of them as a companion.
Strong getting hungry. Want someone to eat. Someday, super mutants kill everything. Strong want to smash something.
And no, Virgil doesn't count because he's not a super mutant, he's an FEV failure, so stop it. Seriously, the hatred for the Brotherhood of Steel in the Fallout community has never made sense to me. But whatever, this isn't a lore video, that's a whole topic for discussion for another time. I suppose we can talk about it in the comment section, since it is an interesting topic if you guys want to. And I'm open to changing my mind if the arguments presented are convincing enough. But again, I digress, let's get back on track. As I said, some of the characters are easier to impress than others. And usually, once you reach the highest level of respect from one, they usually tell you their entire life story, along with their own personal baggage, and you end up getting a unique quest, such as helping Kate overcome her drug addiction, or helping Nick Valentine solve some of his most difficult cold cases. Speaking of Nick Valentine, he was definitely one of the game's most interesting characters. A synth with the memories of a real detective from pre-war times, decided to continue his legacy by offering his services to the people of Diamond City. You can actually work with him to solve his cases yourself. I like that aspect of the game, it was pretty fun. And as I mentioned before, there are some characters who are returning from Fallout 3, for example McCready, and even Dr. Lee makes an appearance. Again, the dialogue you get with many companions, and how some of the relationships between them and the player were handled, was very similar to how it was done in Knights of the Old Republic 2. Bear in mind that game came out many years earlier, during the 6th generation, and you could argue in some ways it was done better, despite it not being perfect. I really do enjoy that game. I should really review that one day, shouldn't I? That would be interesting. Come to think of it, I reviewed the original Knights of the Old Republic game, of course, a while back. I did that for its 20th anniversary a couple of years ago. But I'm going to review the second one also, that one is long overdue, so yeah, stay tuned for that of course. One technical issue, however, that relates to the NPC dialogue, that I forgot to mention earlier, is how sometimes you'll be talking to a character, and all of a sudden the protagonist would just stop talking. The conversation would stall, start bugging out, and the protagonist would start going, uh-huh, okay, uh-huh, yeah, uh-huh, okay, uh-huh, yeah, on a loop, until the NPC gets bored and just gives up. This happens a lot in the game, and it's a pain in the ass, meaning you have to keep restarting conversations, very frustrating. So bearing all that in mind, Fallout 4 is a game that I would say is a bit of a mixed bag. It has a great open world with lots of interesting and unique locations, it has a ton of enemy variety, numerous NPCs, quests and several joinable factions, and pretty good combat and general gameplay. I mean, the VAT system is always really fun and really badass, particularly when you get the Mysterious Stranger perk, that's always cool. I like that you can ride around in a vertibird and explore the map that way. Flying is always fun, of course. I like some of the dialogue and NPC interactions. Some of the companions are quite cool and interesting, others, of course, are not. The graphics and presentation are good for the most part, though I do have an issue with some of the character models. Most of them are fine, though nothing special. Some of them are flat out awful with scary eyes and all that, most notably Mama Murphy. I mean, what even is that? The enemies look great though. I mean, the new Deathclaw design is flat out insane. I mean, look at that. The game also has an incredible soundtrack, easily the best in the series. One of those things I actually think is a bit underrated about the game. I mean, that Brotherhood of Steel Pridwin track is an absolute banger.
Beneath the Commonwealth, there is a cancer, known as the Institute. A malignant growth that needs to be cut before it infects the surface. They are experimenting with dangerous technologies that could prove to be the world's undoing for the second time in recent history. The Institute's scientists have created a weapon that transcends the destructive nature of the atom bomb. They call their creation the Synth, a robotic abomination of technology that is free-thinking and masquerades as a human being. This notion that a machine could be granted free will is not only offensive, but horribly dangerous. And like the atom, if it isn't harnessed properly, it has the potential of rendering us extinct as a species. I am not prepared to allow the Institute to continue this line of experimentation. Therefore, the Institute and their synths are considered enemies of the Brotherhood of Steel, and should be dealt with swiftly and mercilessly. This campaign will be costly, and many lives will be lost. But in the end, we will be saving humankind from its worst enemy, itself.
The futuristic, scientific yet extremely emotional and tonally shifting tune in the Institute headquarters always gets me going.
I can only imagine what you've heard, what you think of us. I'd like to show you that you may have the wrong impression. Welcome to the Institute.
And some of the combat music is just fantastic. Great soundtrack for sure. Unfortunately though, for me, even in retrospect, the game was a pretty shallow experience. I liked the game to an extent, and I'd recommend it if you're a fan of the series, but expect a very watered down experience from Fallout 3 or New Vegas. I personally think Fallout 3 and New Vegas are better games than Fallout 4, though I don't think either of them is perfect. They both have a lot of flaws, and they also have a lot less technical issues than Fallout 4, and were just better experiences in general in my opinion. I'd also favour any of the Elder Scrolls games over this too, but that's not to say that the game isn't worth playing or checking out as a curiosity, it certainly is, and as I mentioned earlier, due to the fact it was basically my introduction into 8th generation gaming, there is a bit of nostalgia with it for me. It certainly has that element. I give Fallout 4 a disappointing and perhaps a little bit generous 6 out of 10. I was tempted to give it a 5, but I think that may be a little bit harsh. Nonetheless, it's a very flawed yet interesting game in my opinion. Thanks for watching guys, that's pretty much all I have to say about Fallout 4. Again, let me know what you think in the comment section. I'm open to discussing the game with anybody and reading your opinions on it. As far as content for the channel for the rest of the year, my next review is going to be for Peter Jackson's King Kong on its 20th anniversary, which some of you might remember I did a walkthrough for some time ago. Great game in my opinion, one of my favourites of all time. I can't wait to review that one. I'm also going to be doing a Christmas special, as I do every year on the channel, so stay tuned for that. And next year I'm going to be reviewing Fallout 3, which I just recently completed again, along with all its DLCs, so stay tuned for that too. Thanks for watching guys. Again, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, since it really helps to motivate me to keep making videos and keep in touch with my audience. Stay tuned for more retrospective video game reviews. Once again, I have a lot of reviews coming to the channel in the near future. Thanks for watching and God bless.
Death is a preferable alternative to communism.